Hello, and welcome to this short webinar, How to Fall in Love with Your Pitch. I'm Sandy MacDonald, your host. I'm the founder of Power Pitch and Power Pack Stories. And it's my absolute pleasure to share with you some of the insights that we have learned over our years of working with PhDs and entrepreneurs and professionals into the communication issues that they face. So my goal today is to help you fall in love with your pitch, to believe that it is the best friend and life partner that it should be to help you achieve your life's goals and to secure your future. So I've got a slideshow that I've prepared that I'm going to take you through, and at the end of the webinar we can have a bit of a Q&A, and I'm just looking forward very much to meeting you all in person one day. So let me get going. So many of you might ask, why should I fall in love with my pitch? What would possibly be the reason for doing that? So I'm going to ask you for a show of hands as to who has actually started or done work on their pitch. And if you have, do you feel like your pitch is worthy of the remarkable work that you're doing? Do some of you feel like you might be a bit of a poor lover in the pitch department? Perhaps a bit of a commitment phobe, not prepared to bring your full attention to it, or a philanderer, going on a date with it just because you want something from it. Let's agree before we go on that a compelling pitch which clearly positions the impact of your research to the right person or people, so that it attracts and retains attention and boosts recall of its key messages in your listener, is a very attractive proposition. One you might even fall in love with. Okay, that's the end of the love analogies. Down to business. I want to just make a quick introduction of us. Who are we? And why are we dedicated to working with PhDs to better pitch your work? And what credibility do we have for this? So we've come to feel an enormous debt of gratitude to every PhD we meet. Your persistence, your focus, your commitment to resolving problems that benefit humanity leaves us in awe. We feel very strongly that your work deserves to be communicated clearly and powerfully so that the right people hear it and act on it. We've been involved in communication one way or another for over 40 years. We ran a marketing communication company for 22 years, and for over 10, we've now been involved in training researchers, professionals, and entrepreneurs in pitching, presenting, and storytelling skills. Our work with more than 150 PhDs has given us an understanding of their struggle to précis an 80,000 word thesis into a fabulous, compelling pitch in around 3 minutes. Now, this experience and our expertise in communication has informed a successful training process we call Power Pitch that helps PhDs overcome these problems to develop a compelling pitch. So let's now look at some of the insights into this work so that I can give you pointers into how you can use them in your pitching. There's a chap called Rasmus Hougaard. He's a world-renowned mindfulness expert. He was speaking at the second Executive Coaching Symposium recently, and he explained that increasing information overload and hyperconnectivity are harming our ability to focus on the tasks at hand. So 47% of our time, we're distracted from what we are supposed to be doing. And that this growing level of attention deficit in organization causes reactive rather than appropriate action. So he's talking about typical organizations in which the people you will need to be pitching to get a job, to get funding, to progress your career, to recruit a colleague, these people are all highly distracted. We all need to grab the attention of those who represent the opportunities we seek. In 2013, Microsoft did a survey to understand how we're reacting to this increasing deluge of digital information. Now, they discovered that we're processing it better, but that our attention span is still down from 12 seconds to just 8 for any incoming piece of information. They made some recommendations to grab this diminishing attention, and we've added our own, and that totals 7 points that we'd like to take you through. Some of them look obvious: be clear, relevant, and succinct, but actually the opposite is true. We so often hear pitches that are just full of jargon, words that people wouldn't understand, way too mired in the how. Being clear and relevant, in other words, absolutely on point for the audience you're talking to, and being succinct, so you've got maybe 500 words in which to do your pitch, is a process. Defying expectation, now that's an interesting one, because what we mean by that is to create inspiration, a surprise, something different, what people are not expecting it. And of course, when you do that, you do provide an immersive experience for your audience. A very critical component of a pitch is to make a clear call to action, to leave your listener in no doubt about what you want them to think, feel, or do as a result of listening to your pitch. Now, all of this has to be pitched from clarity of purpose. You absolutely need to be coming from the why and not the how. It's coming from the why that will allow you to tell the stories that will defy expectations and provide an immersive experience. And when you're very precise about your audience, when you absolutely know who you're talking to and why, and what your intention for talking to them is, that too will ensure that your listener takes away the key messages. And finally, it's about including your unique value. Each one of us is a unique fingerprint of value. And how do you do that? Through your stories. Problem number 2. So we were at an event hosted for PhDs to commercialize their research, and there were around 120 people in the room. And we watched their dismay as they learned from the presenter the statistics of available work for doctorate researchers in their chosen fields. They said was less than 7%. Now, we haven't been able to find statistics to back that up, but they were quite credentialed people. And even if it was higher than that, it's still a small number. We left believing that the quality of their pitching would literally determine their future. And this is proved by the work we do. Recently, we worked with this young man, Chu-Ha Lu. He's a PhD researcher who described his work to stabilize rock ballast under railway tracks. Now, he hoped to create a mesh that would optimize ballast performance, improve safety, boost rail efficiency, and save money. English was not his first language. Although he was clearly committed to his project, his jargon-heavy presentation was, sorry Chu-Ha, but less than riveting to start. Over a day spent training him and his colleagues to more powerfully present their research, we explored with him his original love of rails, of trains. And he told us with excitement that China plans to reopen the old Silk Road to Europe via rail. And we asked him if this was like the story of Marco Polo, but in reverse. The idea just lit up his face. By the end of the day, he'd shifted from the how of his research to the why, supported by personal stories. This is a fabulous quote, and I think that it is there to convince you that story is an absolutely powerful and valid and essential part of your pitching. So Chu-Ha went on to communicate that his work could contribute to safer and better and cheaper railway networks, but he He also shared with us a magnificent vision of a new connection between East and West. And then we did a few hours of extra training with him, and he was able to adapt his scientific presentation to include a story from Chinese history and an analogy involving denim jeans. It wasn't very sciencey, but it was incredibly effective. And despite English being his second language, it made a huge difference that the denim jeans analogy was not only useful, but really very funny. It defied expectations. Who would have possibly thought of a comparison story between a mesh to measure ballast and wearing the wrong size jeans? But it worked perfectly. He not only won the 6,000 CRCA's National Pitch Prize, he's now gone on to win just last week the University of Wollongong's 3-minute thesis competition. And it puts him into the Asia Pacific finals. So he's also been featured in the local newspaper of his home in China. This exposure is all as a direct result of a powerful, purpose-driven and story-based pitch. And it's going to give him a better chance at being one of those 7% PhDs who can gain employment or funding or other opportunities in his chosen field of research. Problem number 3, too much how. Perhaps the biggest problem facing PhDs is the nature of what you do. You're so focused on the how of your work, it's really hard for you to take an eagle-eye view of why you're doing it. During a power pitch training day, there was a young man who'd been looking at a piece of bamboo for 18 months. And he described his work on the properties and the capabilities of this bamboo. Now, like most PhDs, his knowledge of of the bamboo's attributes was huge. He outlined his how, his study methods and protocols, and also the discipline he brought to it was meticulous. When he first pitched his work to a small working group, even his peers in the automotive industry were kind of left puzzled by the jargon and the technicalities. But his purpose for the research, the eureka moment that we hoped would reward him in the world for his painstaking study, remained a mystery, even to his peers. The more he spoke about his method, the less we understood why he was doing the research. So we kept asking him, why does it matter? And finally, we established that if he could prove this thesis, then renewable and biodegradable bamboo had astonishing potential for the transport industry. It could literally replace plastic and petrochemical derivatives as the primary material for vehicle interiors, diverting millions of tons of toxic plastic waste from landfill. We saw his light bulb moment as he realized he could explain why he was doing this research through the story. It was so much bigger than the properties of bamboo and how he was researching them. His why as a quest to rid the world of unnecessary plastic waste was a fantastic story. When he pitched his work at the end of the day, it defied expectations. It was an immersive experience for his listeners. It held attention. Using story, he led them to reflect on how different our environmental pollution problems could be if research like his was to succeed. I love this quote. It's by Alan Alda. You may know him as the medic in the long-running TV series MASH, but he's now also the founder of the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science. When I read this quote, I thought, yeah, this is exactly why we do the work we do. And now there's plenty of remarkable science that proves why stories work to attract and retain our attention and to boost recall of our key messages. I love explaining the science behind how telling and listening to story works in our brain. It's so fascinating, but it's also just common sense. We've always told stories because it's how we've learned many of life's primary lessons. This is why our brains are wired to be receptive to story. They actually release neurochemicals that actively promote focus and trust so that we can learn from the stories. If you think about it, focus and trust, exactly what you need from your audience when you are pitching. Telling good stories is not rocket science, but it must start with the context for telling them. This is the framework for Power Pitch. It all starts with clarity, as you can see, number one, because clarity informs the context for pitching, for telling stories, for presenting, for any form of communication. It's all based on first understanding your purpose, why you do what you do for whom. Everything about great communication stems from that. When you can say, I believe that, just as our PhD said about why bamboo might rid the world of plastic waste, it is amazing what you achieve under the banner, but more importantly, how quickly others believe in what you are doing. Then it comes to who, because when you know your why, then you have to be super clear on who you're pitching to. You need to understand their problem so that you can pitch your solution as the exact match. Now, this might sound obvious, but we've often seen people pitch their solution without understanding that their best audience didn't even know they had that problem. Next comes intention. So you need to establish your intention for pitching, because sometimes it's as simple as being invited to talk further. If your listener says, "Oh, that's fascinating, I'd love to talk some more," then your pitch has done its work. Or perhaps it's much more substantial. You want to be included in a team working on a problem which your research could contribute to. Then if your listener says, "I'd love to work with you on this," then your pitch has been successful. A good pitch is flexible in how it can be modified for different intentions. And then finally, there's your unique value. So we're all a product of our backgrounds, our education, our expertise, and our experience. It's in the intersection of these that our unique value lies. Too often, we fail to fully examine this value fingerprint and to bring it to the forefront of the work we do. So, for example, when you use an insight, that is a fact or a piece of data in context, the fact or the data has a cause and it has a consequence as a result of that data. Now that in its own is just a piece of information. So when you use an insight to demonstrate your understanding of your area of research, you bring to it your perspective, your unique expertise and knowledge, the lens through which you view that data, then that is your wisdom, that is your value, and that needs to be included in your pitch. It's what differentiates you from anyone else who might have an understanding of the data. It is within this context that we can then tell aligned stories that can connect and engage to others. You know, we are all custodians of hundreds of stories, although most of us remain unaware of how many we have that we can tell in context. These stories cement in others a deep trust in us, and they get to believe that we are an authority in our field. This is an invaluable benefit of a good pitch. So what have we learned so far in our quest to fall in love with our pitches? Firstly, that we have to grab attention. So these are the 7 points, just a reminder of the things that I want you to benchmark your pitch against. Is it clear, succinct, and relevant? No language or jargon that other people won't understand. Does it defy expectations? Have you included an aspect of your work based on why you are doing your research that will excite, inspire interest, or even worry your listener? Kind of want them to go, "Oh man, I need that bit of research. I need that solution." When you pitch, is it an immersive experience for your listener? Are they fully engaged all the way through? Is there any point at which you lose their attention? Do you clearly call them to action? Tell them what you would like them to think, feel, or do as a result of your pitch. How clear are you on your purpose? Why you do what you do for who? Can you lay this out simply in one sentence as an I believe that ... statement? Are you completely clear on who you are pitching to and for what intention? And how have you demonstrated your unique value and insights through story? And then 2, to be a committed partner to your pitch so that it works with you to be one of the 7% employed in your field of research. What can you do to hone your pitching skills so that opportunities like winning a 3-minute pitch competition or awards or being featured in the media or talked about by peers or being introduced to people of influence in your field are a direct result? Number 3, why not how? To take an eagle-eyed approach to your work. Now, it's difficult to hear, but the truth is no one, not even people of influence in your field, are at first interested in how you're doing your research. They want to know what it will achieve and why. Because once you've convinced them of that, you've won the right to tell them how. When you are asked how, it means you've successfully pitched why. And lastly, story. It's the most powerful tool in your communication tool bag. I want you to start looking out for your and other people's stories. And once you open your mind to story, you're going to be amazed at how often you hear them in your working life, between colleagues, the ones you tell in social media, and the ones you hear about in social media. And when you hear a story, make a note of how it makes you feel. Do you recall it still? Did it make you think? Because if it did, then it's a really good story. When you've finished this webinar, please, I'd love you to do a little exercise. Grab a piece of paper and write down one line that will jog your memory about something that's happened to you in the last year with your research. It's maybe a success or a failure, or an incident that had a surprising outcome. It maybe was something you saw in a colleague's work that made you pause and think. And then compose a short story around it, no more than 1 minute. That's about 130 words. Who would you tell it to and for what intention? And then go and tell it. And ask the person you've told it to let you know what they heard, because this is the beginning of your storytelling journey. And then think, how might you include that story or one similar to it in your pitch? So I'd like to finish now with the pitch architecture. I'm just going to give you a brief look at the construction of a good pitch. This is the architecture that we use in the Power Pitch training that will help you précis your vast body of knowledge into just 400 to 500 words. We go through in our training to help PhDs sift through everything they know to get to the most valuable nuggets, and we take them through each step and how they can include story, so that at the end of the day they have a compelling and succinct and clear pitch that will defy expectations, will grab attention, and will give their audience an immersive experience. So the pitch starts with the conversational opener. This, after all, might be as far as you get with someone of influence, so it needs to grab that limited attention. I'd like you to consider a woman who was researching a paper towel for its absorbent qualities. She spoke at length about the cellular properties of paper towel until we were really close to nodding off. So we got her to examine why, and at the end, this is how she opened her pitch. If there was a 10-kilometre square of solar panels in the middle of Australia, it would provide us with all the power we need. The problem is, right now, it would need a battery the size of Sydney to store the energy. I'm looking at a paper towel to see how its absorbent qualities might be mirrored in battery storage. Get it? It's great, isn't it? That would grab attention. The architecture goes on to clearly articulate the insights of your particular industry. Remember, these are the big picture facts, the data and context. And then we, in the training, we actually hot seat people so that we can bring that wisdom, that value to the insight to include into the pitch. And these very often lend themselves to pertinent stories. When you've been able to state the insights, this automatically gives you the credibility to explain the particular problem or problems your research is solving. The trick here is to be able to reduce the problem or problems to just a few sentences, and similarly with the solutions. Remember, you've only got 400 to 500 words, so every word must count. We teach the use of language and clear writing as part of the training day, as a section called Writing for Results. And when you've stated your solutions, next you need to be able to explain your commitment, your passion, and your dedication to making these solutions work as part of your I believe statement. It's being able to articulate your purpose clearly, why you are doing the research, not how you are doing it, in light of the insights and the problems and solutions that will cement your credibility and your authority. So now you can lay claim to the impact your research will have when it is implemented or proven. Finally, you can talk about the opportunity. This is the call to action that we mentioned in those 7 points. So for example, the opportunity exists for us to talk further, or the opportunity exists for you to fund the next stage of the research, or the opportunity exists to have me on your team to assist with, blah, etc. So at each of these stages of the pitch that we've talked about, there is an opportunity to tell stories. And as we go through the Power Pitch training day, we explain to people that stories can sometimes take as little as 15 to 20 seconds and still contain all the elements of what is known as the classic story arc, because that also holds your listeners' attention, keeps them completely engaged and keen to find out more. We have shared loads of information with you on this short webinar, and I'd love to think that you can fall in love with your pitch now. The link will be made available so you can listen to the webinar in your own time. So what remains for me now is to thank you for attending this short webinar. I really hope that I've been able to give you some context around how you can fall in love with your pitch and make it your best friend and a lifelong partner in helping you in your chosen endeavors. To thank you, I'm going to send you a copy of the 4 Secrets to a Winning Pitch, which will also remind you of some of the content on this webinar. Now, if you feel you might benefit from our Power Pitch training, which involves a few hours pre-work based on videos and workbook and a full day's training, then please visit the website at www.sandymcdonald.com/power-pitch for the latest training dates in Melbourne, Sydney, and Adelaide. We think it's a small investment to make to ensure your pitch works now and into the future, but more importantly, works for your future. It will also equip you with communication skills you can use in all forms of your professional life, from honing your thesis to interviewing, presenting, and applying for funding. We would dearly love the opportunity to help you fall in love with your pitch and secure your future. So that's it from us for the webinar. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. I'm going to put the webinar now to a Q&A for those of you that are on the webinar, but for those that I'll share the link with, I'm going to end the webinar now. And I'm going to thank you so much for listening. And I'd just like to finish again with the fact that I think you are awesome. I think the work you are doing to better humanity is absolutely fantastic, and it deserves to be powerfully pitched. I hope to meet you soon. Bye for now.